This week, we're talking a lot more about how we can directly influence students just by the way we interact with them, and also how important it is to have very strong connections with their home and their families. The benefits are tremendous. It has been shown that students do much, much better when their family and their school are very connected to one another. This week, we're going to be talking about your final MTSS decisions, and you have a new student on your caseload. So you'll be looking at those 3 students again and how they're doing and what your next steps should be, as well as a new student. And that's the way it would work during a school year as well, where as you're working with one student and they're doing better, or even if they're not doing better, you'll continue to get new cases and new students to support as well. Particular connections with the home and conflict resolution and consensus building strategies, as well as cultural and linguistic connections and how important those are with families. Remember, with MTSS, we're going to continue to progress monitor at least for a few months, even for students that are doing very well with interventions. And then we'll keep that on file. That way, if in a year or two those behaviors or those struggles pop back up, we have some ideas of what to do for them. We're going to work as a diverse team, and that means collaborating and problem solving and coming up with solutions together in order to best serve students. And then we will review new students on an ongoing basis throughout the year as well. When we're talking about consensus, meaning everyone decides on one course of action or one thing to do together, you're going to want that diverse team and have the right people involved. So a lot of times that's a current teacher, a former teacher, perhaps the director, anyone that's a specialist, often a family member as well. And you're going to focus on what is the issue and then have that discussion. So we don't want to come in with our exact solution right away. We know that different people are going to have different perspectives. We're going to make sure that everyone has a chance to have their voice and their opinions heard. Coming up with different proposals and thinking about the options, and then making sure that we can finalize an option and start to assess and coordinate based on what option is chosen as a team. So it's really important, and it can take a little while, but it's really important that everyone's voice is heard and that we're able to make some choices together. Now, conflicts can arise, especially if a student is struggling or if we might be struggling with a coworker or with those decisions. We're going to focus on what the source of the conflict is, finding a private space to talk, and a safe place to talk. So it's really important, again, that we're able to use our voices and freely discuss our concerns. Listening actively means rather than speaking right away or focusing on what we want, we're going to let everyone speak and then listen to them and reflect as much as possible what they are saying to make sure that everyone's voices are heard. Think about the solutions and the situation, and then figure out a way to meet the common goal. So a lot of us have slightly different main focus areas, but we should be able to focus on what our primary goal is, coming up with the solution and who is in charge of each part of that solution or possibility. And then I would say, kind of like MTSS, every couple of weeks or so, you're going to stop, you're going to put it on your calendar, and you're going to evaluate how things are going and determine what needs to be tweaked or changed or continued based on continuing to check in. So you can see how consensus building and conflict resolution is a similar process, really. We want to make sure everyone's voices are heard. We're going to figure out what our next steps are after everyone is able to express their opinions and their thoughts. And then we're going to continue to monitor as well in terms of our decisions. It's really important that we view parents as partners. So it's not, I'm the teacher and I'm going to tell you how things are going. We really, really need to get to know those families in the first place. It's really important to get to know the family's background. What is the language that they speak? What's their religion? What are their family dynamics? What's happening in terms of extended family, or if they're divorced and things like that? Diversity is always important. And so being able to recognize If it's a family that I don't know much about their background, I want to study that more. And hopefully we can create a more diverse workforce as well, where we're also able to connect with them in a more authentic way, where there's some people from their background that are also part of the staff. So there are big benefits to having similar backgrounds. It really varies in terms of who's working in different workforces within early childhood as well. Luckily, early childhood education is more diverse in its workforce than some, but we still have places and situations where families might feel pretty isolated and not connected to their staff. So the more we can learn about family backgrounds, the better. And then remembering that we're always collaborating and working as a team. And there might be different ways that families like to communicate based on their backgrounds as well. So how can I make sure that I am expressing my concerns, areas of strength, and everything else that is going on based in a way that is the same way that families communicate. One theorist that you may have studied a bit about before, but if you haven't, now is the time to do so. I absolutely love Albert Bandura. Remember that we've talked a lot about giving rewards, sticker charts, things like that when students are doing well. Albert Bandura said, yes, some learning occurs from rewards and punishments, but actually tons of learning just happens from observing and copying a model. So we don't always learn from rewards and punishments. We learn from observing what models do. What's really important is that as adults, what we do and how we interact with each other matters tremendously to how students are going to react. So it's really important to remember that they're going to often directly copy us. Students are more likely to copy individuals of the same gender, the same ethnicity. We know that having the same background matters here as well. So students are watching us, and we need to remember that everything that we're saying and doing, students are often going to copy. The most famous experiment is the Bobo doll experiment, where children watched an adult either being gentle with this Bobo doll, this blow-up thing that has sand in the bottom and you can punch it or hit it, or you can roll around with it and it kind of moves with you. And for students that witnessed an adult being violent with the doll, children directly copied that. And for students that saw an adult being more gentle or kind or rolling around with it, students copied that as well. So we need to remember that social learning, not from rewards or punishments, but just from observing what adults or models do, is going to make a huge difference. When we're being culturally responsive, we need to remember again that we're more likely to imitate those we relate to. So having diversity in terms of gender, ethnicity, age, background, religion, and so on really matters. We need to be very aware of our own biases and any direct or indirect messages that we share. So most teachers are not going to say their prejudice or their bias directly, but students are still going to feel that. I can remember a teacher I worked with years ago who definitely had some racism. And I knew that, and I would listen to her speak. And she would never say anything directly, but I have no doubt that her students knew that she had some racism. So are there times related to racism, homophobia, ableism, that we might have these biases and then students are going to feel that and be impacted by that? Absolutely. So as much as possible, working to correct any bias and being aware of any bias and recognizing, we're human. People have bias, but we want to continually work toward correcting that, the better. And we want to be anti-bias educators, meaning we're going to intentionally model accepting responses and behaviors towards others. We're fully inclusive. And the more we can do that, the better our students are going to do in turn. When we look at the current demographics of what's happening in early childhood education, it is a bit more diverse than in K-12 education. When we look at early childhood, birth through age 8, we have around 63% of teachers are white, 17% are Black, and 14% are Hispanic. The vast majority, around 90%, are also women. So when we think about children that might not see themselves represented, gender is certainly a part of that as well. Roughly 91% of teachers speak only English in early childhood, yet we know many of our students also speak languages such as Spanish. It really depends on the school that they are with. Head Start has many more Black and Hispanic teachers and does a better job of being, I would say, culturally representative of the students that they serve. So depending on the school, we might find a lot of representation of the students where the students see themselves in their teachers or not. And it's very important knowing that representation matters. Students are paying attention to the gender and the ethnicity and the languages that their teachers speak. So for all of you that speak more than one language and that also speak Spanish and English, I think that is a tremendous gift and a tremendous benefit for the students that you work with. This week, we are looking forward to looking at the influence of Albert Bandura, the influence of our culture and our background, and how we can best support the students we serve through our interactions and our experiences as the adults that serve them.